Welcome to the Sales Influence Podcast, where we talk about finding the why in how people buy. I'm your host, Victor Antonio. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for lending me your ears. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And an upfront thank you for those of you who always leave me comments on my social media channels. Thank you very much. I try to read them. And again, thank you. From the heart, I want to thank you. Anyway, today, I want to talk about Reset the Game. Ooh, I like that title. I had worked on that title. Reset the Game. I'm going to talk about how to shift your reference point or shift your frame of reference. And I need to start out with a story. Now, I need you to bear with me on this story. It'll be worth your time. The payoff is at the end, but it'll be worth it. So, back in 1986, for my old school peeps out there, you'll know what I'm talking about. For my new school, here's the story. In 1986, Intel, the corporation, was struggling. They were in the memory chip business and they were struggling. The president at the time was a gentleman by the name of Andrew Grove. And as Grove tells the story, he was sitting down with Gordon Moore, who was the CEO at the time. He's president. Gordon Moore is the CEO. Now, if you don't know who Gordon Moore is, look him up. You may have heard of Moore's Law. Moore's Law is basically a phrase that he coined that says, hey, technology, microprocessing speed will double every 18 months and prices will halve in that same time frame. So it's kind of a rule of thumb that people use to gauge how fast technology was accelerating or going at a certain speed. And so Grove, being president at the time, was having this, again, discussion with Moore, right? They're going back and forth about, how we're struggling with this memory chip business, the changes in the market, how do we survive? How do we stay alive? Our revenues are declining. How do we go about changing? And again, the conversation was going round and round and round and round. And finally, Grove asked Moore a key question. Listen to this question. Pay attention. He said, if we got kicked out and the board of directors brought in a new CEO, what do you think that CEO would do? Well, without hesitating, Moore responded, he would get us out of the memory chip business. So then Grove responds, then why shouldn't you and I just walk out that door, basically fire ourselves, and then hire ourselves again, and come back into this room and do it ourselves? Oh, think about the brilliance in that shifting of perspective. Let's do it again. Let's go through it again. So the board, if they got fired, if Gordon Moore or the president, Grove, got fired, they would probably bring in a new CEO, and the CEO would say, hey, let's get out of this business. It's not making us money. Let's shift over to the microprocessing business. Let's get out of the memory chip business. Let's go to microprocessing. And so by saying, why don't we do it ourselves? Let's walk out the door, fire ourselves, and rehire ourselves, come right back in and do it. We know what needs to be done. And it wasn't until later, as their business was growing, not only did Intel survive, they thrived. They changed their business. They basically changed directions. You have to understand, this was a monumental Herculean task. To get out of the memory chip business and move into the microprocessing business isn't as simple as saying, hey, let's just change. I mean, this required the changing of manufacturing operations. You can only imagine how big this task must have been. So that was not an easy decision. But a couple of years later, Grove said something interesting / important. He said, people who have no emotional stake in a decision can see what needs to be done sooner. Let me repeat that. It's worth repeating. People who have no emotional stake in a decision can see what needs to be done sooner. In other words, when you detach yourself emotionally, you can see things. We've all been in situations where we're so in the heat of the moment, and it takes a friend, family member, or colleague to say, you're not looking at this rationally. Here's what you need to do. And you're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Because you were emotionally engaged. Your brain was taking you down a different path. So how does this apply to you? Maybe today you're struggling with your business, with your sales process, with some project, it's just you've been working on it, it's just not going your way. But the problem is you're emotionally invested, you're financially invested, and you're physically invested. In other words, you're mentally in the game. You spent a lot of time, money, and effort. We call that sunk cost. And sunk cost is a hook. It keeps you in doing the same thing over and over again, keep going down the same path, even when things aren't working out, because in your brain you're thinking, man, I invested all this time, all this money, all this energy. I just can't just walk away from this thing. Well, again, think about Moore and Grove's conversation. They walked out the door, fired themselves, then rehired themselves figuratively, and then walked back in and says, now what will we do? How will we do it differently? See, you can do this. If you're stuck, it's just not moving, then here's what I want you to do. Step number 1, stop. Just stop. Take a deep breath, go get some coffee, tea, whatever it may be, just stop. 2, detach yourself emotionally from the project or the opportunity, whatever it may be. Then step number 3, ask yourself, if I had to do this over, what would I do differently? If I had to start over today, what would I do? Think about that. What would you do? Forget sunk costs. Let's push that aside. If you had to start over today, what would you do? For example, let's say you have a website. You've been working on this website. You had this website for the last 5 years. You've put a lot of time and effort, but you see that it's not giving you the results you want. Stop. Detach yourself emotionally from what you've invested in that website, and then ask yourself, if I had to start all over today, knowing what I know, having the collaterals that I have, using the new web technologies that are out there, how would I do it? See, that is resetting the game. It's like in video games. You ever play a video game and you don't like the way it's going? And you're, screw that. Let me reset it. I'm basically saying reset the game for yourself. Reset your game. Because maybe that's what's required for you to just let go of what you've already sunk into the business, sunk into the opportunity, sunk into the project. And it's time for you to say, you know what? That's it. I got it. Let me just stop, emotionally detach, and how would I do it if I had to start all over again? Give that some thought, because maybe that's what you need to get unstuck. Just a new perspective, shift your frame, again, your reference frame, and just simply reset your brain game. And that is it for this Sales Influence podcast. Definitely leave me some feedback on this one on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. By the way, we're also on Spotify. Yeah. Anyway, let me know what you think. As always, I appreciate your feedback. Also, check out the Sales Velocity Academy. Again, 50 courses, over 500 videos. If you're struggling with your sales game, go to salesvelocityacademy.com. That's salesvelocityacademy.com. Lastly, I want to thank you for listening. This is Victor Antonio, always reminding you, selling ain't hard when you know how. Take care. Hi, I'm Victor Antonio. I'm an author, sales trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm often asked, what makes a great speaker? Is it someone who delivers real content that the audience can use? Is it someone who engages the audience so they're part of the learning experience? Or is it someone who can motivate an audience to push them beyond their comfort zone and discover new abilities? The answer is yes. But the most important thing to remember is that I'm not there to look good. I'm there to make my client look good. Simply put, it's never about me, and it's always about them.